Our gospel lesson today is from the Gospel according to St. Mark, the first chapter, beginning at verse 21. Jesus and the disciples went to Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, he entered the synagogue and taught. They were astounded at his teaching, for he taught them as one having authority, and not as the scribes. Just then there was in the synagogue a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus, rebuking him, saying, "Be silent and come out of him." And the unclean spirit, convulsing him and crying with a loud voice, came out of him. They were all amazed. And they kept on asking one another, "What is this? A new teaching with authority? He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." At once his fame began to spread throughout the surrounding region of Galilee. Here ends the gospel. I would like you to think with me about those times when you went to the movie house in your town, your neighborhood. If you were a movie lover, you remember those times well. It was a lot of fun. When you were a little kid, it was also something like a wild, chaotic, awful scene where you tried as much as you could to drive the ushers and the people who ran the movie theater crazy. At least that's what we did at the Commodore Theater in Chicago. And these guys would go up and down the aisles with a flashlight and shine it at you and say, "You, behave yourself." We'd say, "Oh, yes, sir." What a joke. The place was madhouse, and there was popcorn flying all over. And you remember these things. Of course, most of you were very well-behaved children. It's nice that you can live with that fantasy. If we had your parents here, they could tell us another story, I'm sure. One thing we liked to do most was go to the horror movies. Did you like the horror movies? The Creature from the Black Lagoon, The Day the Earth Stood Still. These are classic movies, by the way. Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Abbott and Costello Meet the Werewolf. Abbott meets Costello. Costello meets Abbott. All these horror films were wonderful. And the thing I remember most about the horror films was we loved them and we went to them, and when they were announced and we saw the previews, the previews, I especially remember the Body Snatchers. Remember that one? And the Body Snatchers and the Creature from the Black Lagoon. I saw the previews of these and I thought, this is going to be really scary. And my friend said, "We got to see this." And so the movie would come on and we would be at the movie, and then the part would come where you knew something was going to happen. And what did you do as a little kid? You put your coat over your head, didn't you? Oh man, I had my coat over my head. One movie I had my coat over my head almost the whole time. Maybe you did the same thing. So we loved those movies. And the evil that surrounded those movies. We love those too. But now we're grown up. At least as much as we're probably going to get. And you can't put your coat over your head anymore, can you? You look kind of goofy going to places and say, "Oh, that looks bad. I'm afraid of that." And put your coat over your head. People would say, "What the heck is wrong with this person here? What's happening with them?" But we see a lot of evil, don't we? Sometimes the evil even parades in front of us. I think about especially returning soldiers with traumatic stress syndrome. And now the evil is present in their lives. And hopefully it can be sorted out. But we can see it. The family sees it. Families are seeing this loved one come back, and this is not the same person that left. What's happened to them? Some evil, some unclean spirit has entered their lives. And evil fools us quite a bit, doesn't it? I mean, we think we can understand things pretty well, but later on we find out something that was really evil that we didn't realize was so bad as we thought it was. And we get fooled. Evil tries to say it's good sometimes. I think about that, quite frankly, in my opinion, every time we go to war, I think we're letting evil fool us. Oh, we talk about it, and there's a lot of rational thinking about why this is going to happen, and, you know, we've got to straighten things out. And one thing I did not like about the State of the Union message this year was this aggrandizement of the American military and American strength and American power and America's number one, that kind of stuff. I don't like that talk. I think it gives us a very false sense of who we really are in the world. And I guess if I was a Swede or a German or somebody from Argentina or Brazil, I would be a little bit taken aback by that. What are we, the rest of us? We just get the dregs? Every president makes that speech, however, because why? It's politically correct, isn't it? You'd have a tough time with your party if you didn't make a speech like that, no matter what party you belong to. Everybody makes it. But evil, truthfully, in the end, brings us fear and pain. That's how we can be sure that it was, in fact, evil, by the fear and the pain it brings us. One of the most heartbreaking stories that came out of the civil rights movement in the United States, for instance, involved an 8-year-old girl named Thelma. She was the first student to integrate the Mississippi public school system. And before she left for school on the first day, her mother dressed her up in a cute pink dress. And when Thelma showed up at school, the teacher said, "Thelma, I want you to stand right there by your seat. You are not to sit yet." And Thelma did as she was told. She stood as the rest of the third grade class marched past and spat in her seat. And after the other children reached their seats, the teacher instructed Thelma, "You can sit down now." Now you can sit down. We are shocked by that story. It happened all the time in those days. And in some places, the idea of prejudice towards other people, all kinds of people, is still very strong. We can see pain inflicted on other people. People we know have experienced it sometimes, in various ways. That's a particularly difficult example. But remember the arguments about segregation? Some people even justified it because that was God's plan. It's unbelievable. It's hard today to imagine such a scene. And if you and I walked into one of the Holden schools and saw anything anywhere near that, we would be outraged. But ask yourself the question, how could the teacher not see the evil in that? How could the teacher order that to happen? Any teacher, I don't care about the time and the context. How could a person see that? And did every child spit on Thelma's chair? Think about your own kids when they were growing up. If the teacher said, "Spit on her chair and go back to your seat," what would your kid do? Segregation, after all, was all over the U.S. It was not only in Mississippi, it was in so many places. And that's why so many people let it alone for so long, because we thought it was so powerful and so big, and people would make justification for that, and we would say, well, I don't know, maybe they're right. And for those of us, all white people standing in this room, we have trouble with prejudice and racism and some of the other things that are going on. And I will tell you, if you ever went into analysis and somebody picked you apart on this particular issue, they would find things that you don't like, things that I don't like about myself. I don't know how many of you grew up with bigoted parents, but my father was like Archie Bunker ×3. And I would hear things from him, and I'd say to myself, "Dad," and say to him, "What are you thinking?" Now take a look at today's gospel. Jesus confronts this evil, which is symbolized by this man with the unclean spirit. Could be a lot of different kinds of evil, actually. But Jesus confronts this evil. And notice that in the gospel story, the evil, the unclean spirit, fears Jesus because he represents God. You are the Holy One. Are you here to destroy us? Did you ever say that to God? Maybe you have. Holy God, I pray to you, are you going to destroy me? Do you like the way I'm living, or am I condemned? Over and over, I heard from the girls at the school, you know, these kids who had such a terrible life, that they knew they were going to hell. They knew it. And that God was happy to send them to hell because they were such terrible kids. That's a different kind of evil. A different kind of evil. But that unclean spirit symbolizes this opposition to God. This selfishness or greed or violence or all the other kinds of things that we see on television all the time that is so evil in the lives of people and cause so much distress and pain. But evil understands it cannot stand up to God. Holy One, are you here to destroy us? Sometimes you and I fear evil, I think, because we look at the evil and we think this evil is so bad, not even God can prevail against it. This evil is so bad, God can't even do anything about this. And so we fear it even more. And sometimes we say, you know, evil is going to win. Sometimes it's going to win. I'm glad Jesus never thought like you and me. I don't think that thought ever entered Jesus' mind, that evil would prevail. Not even to the cross. Not even when they threatened his life. I mean, if somebody threatens my life, I might turn in 15 different directions, to be perfectly honest. But not Jesus. And Jesus enters where he is not wanted. You notice that? When evil is present, he just barges in. Who invited you into this scene? Well, I'm coming in anyway. We are not so quick to enter the fight against evil, are we? I think about this last episode with Penn State. Here is evil, clearly an evil situation. And grown-up people, solid people, educated people, people probably very faithful people, some of them, didn't know what to do. One guy goes and asks his father. And you know what this is like. We want to hand off the responsibility of confronting evil to someone else. You know, I saw this. This is very bad. Here, you take care of it. I know. You're higher up in the organization than me. You take care of it. This was a hard lesson. And the fact that Joe Paterno died so quickly after makes the lesson even more amazing, more awful, more confusing for us. Because Jesus is relentless in going after and confronting and judging evil. And the only weapons Jesus has were his own authority, his own power, his own words, and his own truth. That's all he had. Didn't have anything else. Didn't have a group, didn't belong to an organization, wasn't part of a union, didn't have any other kind of security forces around him. Just his own self and his own truth. This is a very hard lesson to learn. There is a section, there is a feeling, and many people have expressed it, that we sectionalize evil out of our lives like it's out there. But the truth is, it's in us. We have evil in us too. We are probably going to confront evil and then sometimes do evil. So every time you have prejudice about something, or you are hypercritical to somebody, or you berate somebody, or you somehow stereotype somebody, or you put them on a shelf for whatever reason, you've done some evil against them. You've insulted them or somehow lowered their dignity. And that happens all the time. And the truth is that unless you recognize that in yourself, you know, in people who are alcoholics, for instance, one thing they're told in counseling and in AA groups and everything else is, that alcoholic is standing next to you every day. You have to make friends with that alcoholic. You have to know that she or he goes in every place with you. They're always there. They're always standing there. And you have to talk to them. And if you turn your back on that alcoholic and think they're not relevant anymore, they're not part of who you are, you will fall off the wagon. You have to know that that alcoholic is in you and with you and always trying to find a way to break in. And the only way to do it and to be successful is to say, I know you're there. I know you're waiting, but not today. Not today. And that's true with the evil in us too. And God takes all of us, all of who we are, all the good and the bad, the whole person who we are, with our own failings and the things we wish we didn't have in us, and all the regrets we have, and all the times we needed to be forgiven, and all the times we failed to forgive when we should have forgiven, and says, that's who you are, and I love you. That's who you are, and that's the person I want to be my representative on this earth. I want you to focus on me, all of you, every part of you. And I will give you the strength that you need in your own weakness. And I will give you the truth that you can't always find by your own self. And I will cover all of it, always. And we need to appropriate this approach, this courage and this confidence. You say that, you know, one of the favorite verses that every church person probably on the face of the earth, we want this. We want to believe that. We say over and over, even in the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Really? Is that really true? Every funeral I've conducted, every family I've talked to, wanted to hear the 23rd Psalm. I don't know, a couple of hundred funerals by now. Well, of course we want Psalm 23. What does that mean when we hear that verse? Even in the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. God transforms the evil and the broken. Thelma would grow up to see a black husband and wife and two girls occupying the White House. Can you imagine when they were spitting on her desk that she ever thought of that? Or anybody else for that matter. And I don't care what your political leanings are or what you feel about how one person performs as president or not. We all have different opinions on that. But that one issue is remarkable. And who brought that about? We did, and God with us. God calls us to this path of inner truth. Look inside and give everything you see to God. See what is human in you. See what is the God-given stuff, the truth of Christ that lives in you. And there is no garbage in there. You know, one person I read said, there are no garbage dumps in heaven. You know, you're not going to get to the gate and St. Peter's going to say, here's a list of things. Leave it out here, but there's a couple of dumpsters over there. Dump all that in there. We're not taking that in heaven. Oh no, it's all coming in. There are no garbage dumps. Everything that you are and I am will be transformed, is being transformed by this loving God when we have the courage to do God's work. And so today the questions that we need to ask one another is, if we will not, with God's help, confront evil, if we will not, with God's help, confront evil, then who are we? If no matter what, I am not going to be encouraged to confront evil, even if God is helping me, it scares me too much. then who are you? And if we won't do this, what good is our faith? Faith in Christ has changed the world. If we had Thelma here, we could ask her what she thought. And it will change and transform and forgive and bless you and me. Always. Amen. To close our service, let's end by singing the first verse of Blessed Be the Tie That Binds. Blessed be the tie that binds our hearts in Christian love, the sharing of a common life is like to that above. Please rise now and receive the benediction. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is lovely, whatever is gracious, if there is any excellence, anything worthy of praise, think about these things. And what you have learned and received and heard, now do. And the God of peace be with us always. Amen.